Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to Albany City Council meeting on Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021 at 6 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America,
which stands
to the republic which stands one nation,
liberty,
God,
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. My internet's kind of weird today, so please bear with me as we go through the agenda. I'd like to roll call, please. I think Allison has working with us this evening.
Councillor Bartholomew.
Here.
Councillor Kopczynski.
Here.
Councillor Bessie Johnson.
Here.
Councillor Smith.
Here.
Councillor Olson.
Here.
Councillor Novak.
Here.
Mayor Johnson II.
I see him.
He's here.
He appears to be present.
Yes.
It's really choppy. And my screen is then vanished on me. Is everybody here?
You didn't say you were.
Oh, I'm here. I didn't hear my name called. That's why I didn't say anything.
Yeah, I wonder if you have something going on with your computer.
My
Apparently now you hear me.
connectivity or something, but I'm by myself. And
Ah, okay.
okay, so is there a proclamation to be put up on the screen? Matthew?
Yep, it's been pretty pokey today. But
So proclamation for Fire Prevention Week, October 4th through 8th of 2021. Whereas the mission statement of the Albany Fire Department is to prevent and protect from, wow, that was kind of fast. The National Fire Protection Agency Fire Prevention Week is the week of October, first week of October, and whereas the theme of Fire Prevention Week 2021 focuses on smoke alarm education, and whereas the Albany Fire Department engages in smoke alarm education year-round with the community. Now, therefore, I, Alexander D. Johnson II, Mayor of the City of Albany, do hereby proclaim October 4th through 8th, 2021 as Fire Prevention Week in Albany. I call upon all residents to join in this observance. In witness thereof, whereof I hereto set my hand and cause the seal of Albany to be affixed this 22nd day of September 2021. Alexander D. Johnson, Mayor. Thank you. So next thing is going to a public hearing, and I have to read the statement. Give me just a second to get my screens lined up. Where's my screen? Yeah, the internet is really choppy today. That should do it right there. Okay. On tonight's agenda is a legislative public hearing regarding planning file DC-01-21. The applicant is the City of Albany Community Development Department. I call to order this public hearing at 6:03 p.m. Bang the gavel. Do any members wish to declare a conflict of interest? Hearing none. Do any members wish to abstain from participating in the proceedings? I see no abstentions. If you wish to testify, there are two options available, which were described on the council agenda and the notice materials. For those wishing to testify, please be aware that you must raise an issue with enough detail to afford the council and parties an opportunity to respond to the issue if you later want to raise that issue on appeal in the Land Use Board of Appeals. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards approval standard staff, and will describe or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or development code which you believe to apply to that decision. If any additional documents or evidence are provided by any member, any party, the commission may allow a continuance or leave the record open and allow the parties to be reasonable opportunity to respond. At this time, I will call over a staff report. Matthew Rutgers.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Matt, could you allow APG to share their screen for the PowerPoint?
They should have that ability.
Okay. Thank you, Kate. So, as the Mayor indicated, we're here tonight to have a public hearing for the planning file DCO 121. This is the non-conforming situations and minor miscellaneous minor amendments to the Albany Development Code. Next slide, please. So this is phase 3 of the 2017 Development Code audit. Phase 3 package includes non-conforming situations and some minor clarifications to phase 1 and phase 2 amendments, plus a few miscellaneous amendments. And I'll give you a kind of a brief history. According to our 2017 code audit, the city's existing standards and procedures for non-conforming situations have been a source of friction for some time. The code audit identified several issues that should be addressed with future code amendments. Some of these have to do with usability and clarity of the code, but others are a little bit more substantive. So following that code audit, project team and city staff worked to conduct a more detailed assessment of the non-conforming situation regulations, including an evaluation of similar regulations in other jurisdictions. And this evaluation and code concepts reviewed with the ADC task force as well as commercial realtors. The results were then shared with the Planning Commission and City Council at joint work session on December 14th, 2020, and again at January 11th, 2021. And staff, through the process, had also identified a few minor housekeeping amendments that needed to clarify a few items in our code for allowability of accessory structure or accessory dwelling units and how to calculate density bonuses for affordable housing. And also add criteria for concurrent applications, clarify applicability of transitional buffers between multifamily and lower density residential uses, and a few other minor amendments. The Planning Commission held a public hearing, on August 30th of 2021, and unanimously voted to recommend that the City Council approve the proposed text amendments to non-conforming standards and the minor housekeeping amendments to the development code. And with that, I'll actually turn it over to APG for the presentation.
Who's APG?
Angelo Planning Group is our consultant
Right,
for the project.
Thank you, Matthew. This is Kathy Corliss. I'm a principal with Angelo Planning Group. And as many of you may recall, oh, and let's see, can I get the next slide, Kate? Thanks. Right. So as many of you may recall, the purpose of this project, in particular, I'm speaking of the non-conforming situations update, was to improve the overall organization, and in particular to clarify which regulations apply to non-conforming uses versus non-conforming development, and to better facilitate the reuse of existing improvements. The revisions also provide more options for property owners who are impacted by a fire or other disaster. Next slide, please. So again, as some of you may recall from the joint work session in December 2020, the proposed concept was to reorganize the code to clearly differentiate between the requirements for non-conforming uses, for non-conforming developments, and for non-conforming lots. And there was general support for that approach, and that's the approach that we've taken in the proposed amendments. It is important to keep in mind that a site, the way this is structured now, a site can be non-conforming based on lot size, development, or use, or any combination of these three reasons. And so properties are subject to the standards and procedures for all of the types of non-conforming situations that would apply to that property. So for example, you could have a non-conforming use in a non-conforming building, or a non-conforming use in a conforming building, or a building that conforms to the code. So next slide, please. So first I'll address non-conforming lots. That's the simplest of the sections related to non-conforming situations. Non-conforming lots are basically a lot that doesn't meet the current lot standards. They're typically not impacted by their non-conforming status. That's the case today, and that would be the case under the proposed code. This section was amended to refer to all legal lots, not just lots of record, as was the case in the existing code. And that change is consistent with the definition of non-conforming lot. And there was general support for that approach. So that, again, is the approach that was taken in the draft amendments. Next slide. So non-conforming development, and again, non-conforming developments are the physical improvements. So the building height isn't conforming to the current zone, or the setbacks, or the other attributes of the building, the physical attributes of the building aren't in conformance with the zone. It doesn't speak to the activities happening in that building, but rather just the physical improvement. And that could be also true of, for example, other physical improvements like a parking lot. But under the proposed amendments, non-conforming developments generally may continue unless they're specifically limited by other regulations. They can be enlarged or altered in any way that satisfies the current code, current requirements. So for example, if the code is changed in such a way that a building is now allowed to be taller, even if it wasn't a permitted height when it was built, the code's changed to allow taller buildings, then that is in fact, it could be enlarged toward that direction. But it cannot be enlarged or altered in any way that increases its nonconformity. So if, for example, a building is too close to the street today to meet its setbacks requirement, they can't move closer to the street. They could move further from the street, or they could add on behind, but you cannot add on in front of or increase the nonconformity. So those are the requirements as far as the general requirements for nonconforming development. The next slide, Kate, if you would. So the big change for nonconforming development is that right now a vacant development can be reused by, or as we're proposing that a vacant development could be reused by a conforming use at any time, provided that the building code requirements for that occupancy can be met when the building is reoccupied. And that is a significant change. Currently, the way it's worded, there is some need to maintain a non-conforming status. And in this situation, with the proposed amendments, that wouldn't be necessary. That status, if it's just the building that's non-conforming or the structure improvements and so forth, that's not necessary. They can be reoccupied at any time. And that is intended to allow greater flexibility for the reuse of existing buildings. However, if a non-conforming use wanted to occupy a non-conforming development, it would still be subject to the non-conforming use time limit. And we'll talk a little bit about more about that when we talk about non-conforming uses. There was also general agreement on this concept, and that is the concept that's reflected here. Kate, next slide. So one of the other major changes was to revise the approach to required incremental improvements. So right now, the code requires that certain improvements be made when applicants are proposing projects of more than $25,000. However, the task force supported increasing the threshold, and that is reflected in the draft code. And as well, other changes were made to this section to make it easier to administer For example, we're recommending that the cumulative look back for calculating that amount is 3 years instead of currently it just says it doesn't specify a time limit. And so presumably it's indefinite, which makes it, of course, very difficult for staff to know whether that threshold has been met. The list of excluded costs is more specific, and the list of improvements that are excluded are, and also the list of improvements that you can spend the required 10% incremental improvement money towards is more specific, but also has more flexibility. It's a 2-tiered instead of a hierarchical list that requires you to go down the list. Instead, it's you have to do everything in class 1, kind of category 1. If you don't have anything in that category, you look to category 2. Within category 2, you can choose which items best suit your development. So there's more flexibility for the developer. And I think more ease of implementation for staff, which were our goals. Okay, next slide. Let's see. Okay. Trouble with my screen, pardon me. So on to non-conforming uses. As I said, non-conforming development's the physical improvement. Non-conforming uses are the activity, right? They're the action that's happening in a building. And a non-conforming use could actually be occurring on a site that's conforming or non-conforming. So again, that's a different, breaking that out from clearly from non-conforming development was an important part of how we restructured this. But non-conforming uses may continue to operate on a site. They are allowed to make some changes to operations and so forth. We are recommending a change to the current wording right now. In residential uses, they can't extend into the period of 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. So they could go as late as 10:59. And the recommendation is to shorten that period so that they can't go any later than 10 p.m. or start any earlier than 7 a.m. And that amendment would make this section more consistent with other parts of the municipal code. All right. Next slide, Kate, if you could. Okay, so one of the things that is a little bit different also in the new code is how and when the clock starts ticking for a non-conforming use. So that concept is in the current code. We tried to make it clearer so that when the clock starts ticking and what kinds of actions start that clock ticking so that you know when the time frame, whether it be 3 years or 5 years, has expired is important. So again, that's different than non-conforming development. Non-conforming development doesn't have that kind of same idea of a clock ticking and the use needing to cease if it hasn't been in operation for a period of time. But non-conforming uses do have that. If a non-conforming use loses its non-conforming status, it can't be restarted. So right now, the current code requires a discontinuation. It's 1 year, and there's an additional 2 years extension possible. So a total of 3 years. But that extension requirement has been a problem. It's a discretionary review. And oftentimes people don't know that they need to request it at the end of 1 year if they have discontinued the operation. And so they're looking for maybe somebody to take over a business. It's non-conforming as a use. They don't know that they need to get it reinstated to get the additional 2 years. So the recommendation is to go to a straight 3-year time frame in residential zones and to provide a little bit of additional flexibility in non-residential zones. So 5 years in non-residential zones. And that's something that we talked about in fairly at length in December at the work session. And that recommendation is what's reflected in the draft amendments. Okay, and I think that is going to summarize the comments on the non-conforming situations amendments, and I'll hand it back to staff to discuss the remaining amendments in the package. Thank you.
Director Rutgers, you have anything else?
I think Ann's gonna kind of finish off the last little bit of our presentation.
Yeah.
Right, Ann.
Yeah, so you will see that in the council packet, there was a second exhibit, Exhibit B to the ordinance. And this includes a few what we would consider housekeeping or miscellaneous minor amendments to the development code. Most of them are edits that were needed after we most recently updated the code with some clear and objective standards, and some of those standards were not clear and objective enough for us to use them. So some of those are in Article 1. Some of them relate to accessory dwelling units. In order to comply with state law, we needed to clarify that they are allowed on any legal single family lot. And right now it says that it needs to meet the minimum lot size of that zoning district. Then there is a section in Article 3 that allows for lot size reductions to encourage affordable housing developments, and some of the standards there just needed a little bit of clarification. And in the airport section, overlay section, which is in Article 4, which is the commercial industrial zones, we needed to reference the new vertical datum so that there were some consistencies with the airport master plan. And then there was some confusion in Article 8 with the transition buffer between multifamily and a multifamily development and then a lower density development. So we are clarifying when that additional buffer and setback applies. And essentially that would apply when there is lower density residential development, but would not necessarily apply to a property that is developed with non-residential uses. Kate, can you move to the next slide? Thank you. So all of these amendments, both the non-conforming situations amendments and the miscellaneous amendments, we have 2 review criteria in the code that need to be satisfied. The amendments to better achieve the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan than the existing language. And the amendments are consistent with the development code policies on purpose and with the purpose statements for the base zone, special purpose district, or development regulation where the amendment is proposed. Next slide. So in Exhibit C, you will see a much more detailed list of staff findings and conclusions related to how the amendments, and both related to non-conforming as well as miscellaneous minor amendments, support our comprehensive plan goals and statewide planning goals. I've listed a few here. Citizen involvement, you heard Matthew say that we did have quite extensive citizen involvement through the use of a task force for the non-conforming updates. And that task force also worked on some of the clear and objective language that we are trying to correct with some of the minor amendments. There were work sessions, and we reached out to people that had contacted staff with concerns about existing sections of the code. Then we did do notice in the paper and held the Planning Commission hearing, and your hearing tonight. So other goals, Goal 9, economic development, of course, reusing existing buildings and also encouraging redevelopment in existing areas as an efficient use of land, and that promotes economic development and helps existing businesses expand. So we think the proposed changes to the non-conforming sections will help us with that. And then Goal 10, housing. This is a really important goal, obviously, today, especially with the housing crisis continuing across the country. We hope that these minor amendments will continue to encourage additional dwelling units to be built, and ideally ones that might be more affordable. And related to that, there is a letter in your packet from Alan Lazo, who is the executive director of the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. He wrote in just requesting that staff beef up our findings related to Goal 10, which we did in the exhibit that is attached to the ordinance. And then the purpose statements, I'm not going to read through these, but we, of course, want to make sure that any proposed amendments do meet the purpose of why we have the amendments. And the details are in your findings, but staff does feel that the package of amendments do meet both review criteria and comply with our comprehensive plan and our purpose statements. With that, I will open it up for questions, and we could probably stop sharing the screen.
So thank you, Ann. Do any councilors have any clarifying questions regarding this effort? The first person to raise their hand was Councilor Kopczynski.
Yes, going back to the last section that the consultants brought up on screen, they were talking about extending the time frame for non-use compliance or process to a potential developer, et cetera, from 1 year to 3 years, because a lot of folks didn't really understand that they needed to reapply, especially if they came into the process a little bit later. So my question is, how are they being notified now? And if we're just simply changing the time frame from which they can do things, how are they going to be notified in the future? And I'll just preface all of this by saying, my eyes glazed over trying to go through all of this. It was kind of a slog reading through this. And so not an awful lot of questions, because quite honestly, I'm upside down on some of these, but I like what I'm reading so far. And I just had that one question that I just brought up.
Thank you, Councilor Kopczynski. Did Saffron respond to that, or should I go on to the next question?
I would be happy to respond unless Matthew wants to answer your question about how do potential purchasers of property know whether or not there's been a 1 year time frame. We really just work with anyone that calls us if they're looking for property to try to determine when was the building last occupied, and we give them some tips on looking at different kinds of records and utilities, and we can look at our utility records, and it is hard to determine. So having a larger time frame makes it a lot easier, and also the ability to reestablish a use is really a big bonus here. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I do feel that there are ways to try to figure out when a use may have ceased operation, and we have some specific examples in the proposed language that make that a little bit more helpful for the kinds of things that people could look at to determine when a use stopped.
So basically, it's up to the potential buyer or property owner, et cetera, to wade through the information that there's no active way that we can be proactive, I guess, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, where we can be proactive really it is when we have certain approvals that we know are going to expire, we're able to notify people, hey, you've got something that's going to expire. But when you have a use been there for 15 years, we don't have a way to let people know. And then the use left and the business went out of business. We don't really have a way of knowing when that business went out of business. Like I said, we just work with the realtors, the prospects for that property to figure out how long it's been. And most properties don't sit vacant for 3 years. So I do think this will be a really big improvement in allowing us to possibly reestablish a use. And again, remember, the building itself can stay if the building is not, the building could be non-conforming, the lot could be non-conforming, and really what we're just talking about right now in your question is that use. And uses can change to other uses that are allowed in the code. Of course, that is just becoming conforming, but then if they want to reestablish a use, the use that was a non-conforming use, they do have more options now with the proposed changes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Johnson, your question was next.
Yes, I agree with Councilor Kopczynski. This is pretty dry reading, and I mean, I just can't imagine. I mean, we are scheduled to have this on the agenda, and we need to read it, and we've had sessions and stuff. But you know, my first question was, did we have any of the planning and city council meetings that weren't virtual?
I think
I mean,
that
we didn't have a chance for the public to come and listen to what it was, you know, and if people, you know, aren't aware of it, they don't know of it. So it brings me to it's 2.310, the non-conforming situations. 2 and 3. 3 especially, you know, if we're dealing with the historic district and stuff, okay, there's a lot of say buildings, houses that have rented apartments in the basements, have this and that. And then if someone comes in and buys it, how in the heck do we expect the buyer to find all the old records if the city can't, you know, help them? I mean, the delay, the expense, and I'm thinking, what do we need to know all that stuff for? Can't we go in and say, okay, this is how it is now. It's safe. You know, that's what we have inspectors for. And not be such a hassle for someone who wants to maybe open a business in a house or whatever they want to do with it. I read this and I thought, you know, I don't think I could find all the records on my house when it was built and who did this and who did that. So I think that's just a little bit of an overreach. And so I'm not real happy with that part. That's all for now.
Thank you. Any other councilors have anything?
I
Council,
would,
Yes,
I got you. I got you.
I'd like to ask Ms. Callan and our consultant Kathy Corliss, can you tell me how many changes are involved in this 50 pages that we're supposed to have read and digest since last Friday?
Well, we did have the code amendments in a track changes version, I believe, at the work session in December. It was very, very hard to read because there's a lot of things that are moving. And so we felt that it would actually be easier to understand the new code because it, you know, while it does carry over some of the existing items from the current code, it's, you know, it is substantially reorganized, and that made for a lot of track changes that were very hard to follow.
So how many are there? How many changes did you make?
Well, again, a lot of things were moved, but for example, in the case of Councillor Johnson's comment about the requirement that, you know, a use be legally established, that is from the current code. That's in the code today. And you can see that in the strikeout text. So we can provide a copy of the track changes version again in comparison. It is substantial because of a lot of the text was moved, and the commentary is meant to sort of guide you. The commentary boxes are meant to explain where the text, you know, what changed and what the big ideas that shifted were. We hope that was helpful, but again, it was a sense that it was very difficult to read and track changes because of all the moving parts. So when you move something, you have to show it struck and then show it in new. And that ended up, and there was a lot of renumbering as well. So apologies if that is hard to discern the differences.
So you can't tell me how many there are.
In an absolute number, no, I'm afraid I can't.
Tens, 20s, hundreds?
So yes, I would say most sections have changed in some way. Now, in some cases, those changes were, again, simply reorganization, but there are substantial changes to the way that we are calculating or proposing to calculate the amount of time that a non-conforming use has to be reestablished.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't be more specific.
Counselor Novak was next.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I concur with the statements that Councillor Johnson made with regard to the difficulty of tracing things from years gone by. That's the only comment I want to make at this time.
All right, thank you. Counselor Smith?
I just wanted to comment that I had sat in on all of the meetings last year when the most recent collection of meetings to develop these changes with the Planning Commission and the joint meetings with the council. I remember attending meetings previous to this because this project began a couple of years ago. And I found the packet that was in today's agenda, or the materials in today's agenda packet, to be really helpful without the track changes, because I've been paying attention to the changes all along, and the showing things that moving wholesale from one section to the next was very helpful. It was a good reminder of what I'd been listening to for months. And I'm not asking for extra credit here. It's just that I've been following the issue along, and I'm satisfied with where we are. It's a big improvement.
So I will add, I tend to agree with Counselor Smith and Counselor Kopczynski. I read it and it's mind-boggling, but 3:30 this morning I read it again, and that rain woke me up. So I didn't have any complaints or concerns. I just wanted to know, is things going to, for as far as the consumer time, the person that wants to build, how is these changes impacting time for them? Matt Reckers, Director Reckers.
Sure. As far as the actual land use process, it doesn't change our processes. It does. I feel, and I think our consultant and Ann would also say the same, and we heard the same from our commercial realtors, was we significantly improved the code and allowed quite a bit of more flexibility. The other thing I did want to note, back to Councillor Johnson's comments, in making sure that as a group we're understanding what these development code changes are, is really we're talking about development code, and there's another element to utilizing structures or changing uses, and that's the occupancy for building. So we can have non-conforming structures and non-conforming uses, and sometimes the term use gets mixed up with use from the building code. And so we try to talk about occupancy when we look at buildings, and when we're looking at, like, say a building that's a residential use that's going to convert to something else, that may be absolutely permitted for our development code, or might have a land use process associated with that because it's an allowed use. Then they just need to go through a land use process. But then there's also the building code side of things, where that structure has to be evaluated per the state's building code to verify that it's in compliance. And that's a completely separate issue from what we're talking about tonight. So just wanting to make sure that we don't get those two kind of mixed up. I mean, they do kind of run hand in hand. They're both things that applicants have to navigate as they're moving into a new property or changing or establishing a business, but there are definitely separate issues. So hopefully that helped kind of clarify.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Reckers. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, there's Councilor Johnson again. Councilor Johnson?
Okay. Yep. I just want to make sure that we don't put such a burden on people with our codes or whatever. My husband used to be a contractor, and when he worked in Corvallis for many years, he'd go over there, and he just stopped working over there because their codes were so weird and so tough, and so where you got to be kidding me. You want me to do what? And so I don't want us to be that way. I know it's probably been the same, all the time and whatever, but that doesn't mean that it makes it easier or makes it right. I think we need to help rather than hinder. That's basically what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Bartholomew, do you have anything? You don't? Okay. So do any counselors with that, public testimony, no one registered to speak during the hearing, and no written material was received before noon. Does anyone have procedural questions they would like to raise at this time? So I declare,
You say nobody wanted to speak to our great massive changes to our code?
report that I have says no.
Wow. I wonder if anybody understood what we were
Catlin
doing.
can confirm.
I bet they didn't. Yeah.
It was properly noticed, I understand. So I declare this public hearing closed at 6:40 PM, September 22nd, 2021. So city council deliberation, discuss any, city council and deliberate, discuss any questions of staff. There's an ordinance which exhibits your consideration, starting on page 6 of the city council packet. And there are a couple sample motions for consideration in the email from staff sent this afternoon. Councilor Olson.
Yes, seeing as how the public is mute on this whole thing, I'd like to suggest that we table the discussion. And I'd like to suggest that we table it till next January. How about the second meeting in January? I think that'll give us time to at least read through it and perhaps digest it, and give the public a chance to become aware of it and perhaps have some questions.
Well, give me just a
So
second.
that's a motion to table this until the second meeting in January.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye for tabling this to next January.
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Mayor, I saw a Cody Lusman raise his hand and I didn't know who
I
he
can see
was.
Give me just a second. Hold your motion, Bill. I got Dick. Let me find this document. I've got several I'm looking at. I'm gonna go to email. I'm sorry, Mr. Ertzman. I'll get to trying to find the email. Okay. I need 6 monitors right now. Okay, so Allison sent me the email.
Cody, I believe you had signed up to speak under business from the public, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, correct. I just hearing what was just going on, I didn't know if I had the opportunity to let the council know that.
Oh, you're signed up from business from.
Yes.
So we got time. So we haven't got to business from the public yet.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, so going back to the land use, I will call on you when it's time, Mr. Utzman.
Utzman, yeah.
Give me just a sec. Where the hell is my mouse? I can't find my mouse. Okay, there it is. Just a minute, Councilor Johnson. I'll get to you in a sec.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to leave it up.
Okay. So, point of order. City attorney here.
Yep, I'm here.
Got a motion and a second.
You have a motion and a
We got a
second,
motion and a second.
and you've got, actually, you've already voted on it. So it sounds like you may want to take roll call. It sounded like it was a 3-3.
So we'd like to.
We didn't,
You do roll.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
we didn't vote.
Okay, so I right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say no.
No,
No. No.
Now can we have a roll call vote? Allison, you're there? City
Also
Clerk?
hearing.
Sorry. Counselor Bartholomew,
No.
Counselor Kupczynski,
No.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Smith,
No.
Counselor Olson,
Yes.
Counselor Novak.
Yes.
That is in fact 3-3.
So I vote no. The motion passes. No,
Don't be a loser.
motion fails.
So, well, so now, Mayor, then I would go ahead and read the ordinance for the first time and
Will the city attorney read the ordinance for the first time
Yep.
in title only?
Yep. An ordinance amending ordinance number 4441, which adopted the City of Albany Development Code by amending the Albany Development Code text and adopting findings.
Will the counselor like to make a motion to read the ordinance a second time in title
I
only?
would move to read the ordinance by second time by title only.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
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 So we'll have to bring that back at another time.
It'll come back at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next public hearings on the CDBG.
Alex,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. I need to get the names of those who voted no, please, for the record.
Counselor Olson, Counselor Johnson, and Counselor Novak.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is item B, 2020 CDBG Consolidated Annual Performance Report. And Catlin will be doing the discussion on pages 55 through 83 in your packet.
And Matt, can you make sure that I can share my screen? I'm just going to do a very short overview of the details in your packet.
Have that ability.
So I
Okay.
have a statement to read. Started, okay. Next on tonight's agenda is a public hearing for, I have a short statement to read before we get started. There's a 2020 Consolidated Annual Performance Report directions for how to testify or submit written materials were published in the council agenda. I declare the public hearing open at 6:47 PM, 2021. Is there a staff report?
Thank you. Yes, it's just a short presentation and I will get going. And you can see my screen and hear me okay?
I can.
Yes. Okay. All right. Just need to get my cursor on the right screen. So tonight we have asked you to review and consider our performance from last fiscal year, which is contained in the 2020 annual report. This report is submitted to the Department of Housing and Urban Development every year. So we hold a public hearing to hear comments on the city's performance. And this is also a chance for the public and you as counselors to share any ideas for needs that could be addressed within the community. A reminder, and for those in the audience, the federal community development block grant program goals are to develop viable urban communities, principally to benefit low and moderate income residents and neighborhoods. So in 2020, last fiscal year, you may remember that we received CARES Act funding in addition to our regular allocation of funds. So we were managing and overseeing double the number of projects that we would normally do in 1 year and about double the funding. So we had about $800,000 and spent between about $700,000, I think, in trying to address COVID-19 and prevent COVID-19, in addition to doing the regular work that a lot of our agencies in the community do to address homelessness and serve our low and moderate income people, provide safe housing, that kind of thing. So on the screen, you will just see a few of these accomplishments. They are in the report, although the report format that comes out of a program that HUD has, it's just a little hard to understand. But in general, the kinds of activities that were provided with the CARES Act funding that went through the CDBG program were to help our existing businesses with emergency grants. We allocated money to Community Services Consortium so that they could help Albany residents with rent relief and mortgage relief. There were funds that went to the YMCA and Boys and Girls Club to help provide childcare and youth services to households that were impacted by COVID-19 and help kids attend school or help parents get to work. There were emergency food boxes handed out by Salvation Army as well as Furniture Share. And Furniture Share tried to deliver desks and tables to households, especially those with kids, so that they could attend school remotely last year. And the shelters received funding to provide additional services during COVID-19, serving almost 200 people in a short time period. And then the Jackson Street Youth Shelter also served 10 youth, and their numbers were a little bit down because of the spacing requirements and unable to accommodate as many youth in their current house. Family Tree Relief Nursery serves a lot of our at-risk families in the community, those that may have alcohol addiction or other issues going on that may increase chances of child abuse, and served quite a few families. And then Cascades West Council of Governments provides a senior companion program, which not only helps shut in low-income seniors, but the companions themselves are actually low-income seniors, and they receive a very small stipend to pay for their gas money. Then the Furniture Share delivered a lot of food boxes and furniture, and I don't know that you can see these pictures very well, but I did just go out on a site visit this week to see a completed housing rehabilitation project, but funds are used to help existing low-income homeowners with essential repairs to their homes. And 5 of those were completed this year, even with COVID going on. A lot of the work was on the exterior for most of the year. But what I didn't know, and you may notice in these pictures, the before pictures are at the bottom on my left, and the after pictures, it looks like the house isn't painted, so that this house got a new roof, new siding. The vinyl siding had cracks and was warping, and got hardy cement siding, and they got, some new doors and things like that. But there is a shortage of an ingredient in paint. So if you have needed to paint your house lately, you may notice that you can't get the paint that you want. So it's not quite finished because there's still some priming and painting needing to be done. So we try to ensure that we are serving a good cross-section of our population. And the different pie charts here just show that we served about 16% of the people served were identified as Hispanic or Latina, and about 12% were identified as non-white. And I don't have a pie chart, but almost all of the residents that were served fall at or below 30% of median income and or below 60%. So we are serving those households with the greatest needs in our community. So before I'll be happy to take questions on the report and also ask you for community needs. I did want to let you know that you did receive 2 letters that I think Councilor Johnson will have me just read and paraphrase into the record here in a moment. And I'll just take this opportunity to remind you that one of the main goals of the Department of Housing and Urban Development is to ensure fair housing for all. There are numerous the Fair Housing Act and amendments to that act. It's really important that as a city, we strive to affirmatively further fair housing in all of the ways that we can. And there is a training coming up. I just want to plug this. It is being paid for with Community Development Block Grant funds, and we are hosting it with Corvallis There is a training for public officials and staff coming up October 12th that's virtual, and it would be great if we have more city staff and elected officials and appointed officials than Corvallis does. So I hope you will attend that. And with that, I will answer any questions. Thank you.
So thank you, Ann, for the presentation. Do any councilors have any clarifying questions regarding the annual report? And I see Councilor Johnson's first up.
Yes, thanks, Ann, for the report. I know everybody and anybody needed help this past 18 months. On page 58, what you were just going through, it was for the community lending works, and it says that the businesses, the 2018 to 22 expected to assist businesses was 10 and jobs were 9, and yet nothing has gone to them. And so that's the first question. And the second question is, when we get down to the bottom where it says the Chance Shelter, is that their old place or is that the old Signs of Victory place?
Yep. Those are great questions. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I don't think that I need it. I just need to stop sharing here. Sorry about that. So to answer your first question, it's a little confusing how the numbers come out of the federal program. We, anything that we put into the system after July 1st will show up. Anything between July 1st and June 30th will show up in this report. And sometimes it may include some carryover from last year. But the emergency business grants, Community Lending Works processed and received lots and lots of applications. But as stuff whittled down and lots of other funding sources became available, it whittled down to 15. So those funds I've been in communication with Community Lending Works. Unfortunately, the city's funds and other CDBG funds got pushed back behind other resources that were available. They are actually issuing checks this week to all 15 businesses. So I got that notice today, and they've been working with these businesses for quite some time, and also making sure that they got the correct documentation, that they qualified for the funding, and those are ready to go and be paid out. So I hope that answered the first question.
Yeah. Time lag, I can understand that. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, and then the Chance is the numbers reported under the homeless population. That is for those residents that are staying in the old Signs of Victory shelter that Chance took over in February. So since February, they have served quite a few people. And we are talking about, they call it Second Chance, but it's still just part of the same organization, Chance. But we are talking about homeless people being served by Chance in those numbers.
Oh, yeah, I just wasn't sure if they had, when they had taken it over. And so I'm just glad to see that, because they do such a good job that I'd like to see them get any help that they can get to keep that going. So thank you.
So thank you. Thank you very much, Ann and Councilor Johnson. Any other councilor have anything?
Yes, I'd like to endorse Furniture Share. They took a big old tube TV off my hands, and I hope somebody's enjoying it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other councilor have anything? No, I don't see anything. So does any councilor questions? No one registered to speak during the hearing. 2 letters were received in support of the CDBG programs, one from Dev Northwest and one from Jackson Street. And I would like staff to, I'd like Ann to read those letters and give us a summary.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. Thank you. So the first one is from Liza Newcomb, who is the home repair manager at Dev Northwest. And she says that everyone deserves to live in a community of opportunity, in a good, affordable home with access to the neighborhood resources we all need to do well. We are in a housing crisis, and the hardworking low and moderate income homeowners of Albany are having to make tough choices, like paying a mortgage or fixing a leaky roof or putting food on the table. We know that housing gives people an opportunity to build better lives and to succeed. and you need a place to call home in order to do that. Working with the City of Albany, Dev Northwest has directed critical funds to address deteriorating housing stock and address income inequities by offering down payment assistance to first-time home buyers. She is writing to express her support for the 2020 report that demonstrates how the city works to create and preserve affordable housing, reduce homelessness, provide needed services, enhance economic opportunities, and increase accessibility for all community members. The second letter is from Ann Craig, who is the Executive Director of Jackson Street Youth Services, and it is longer, and I thought Liza's was short, but I felt like I was reading for quite some time. I'm going to just hit a few highlights in her letter since you have that. It was sent to you this afternoon. So for those of you that may not be aware, Jackson Street offers outreach for youth ages 10 to 24. So they have several programs. Their 24/7 shelter serves kids ages 10 to 17. That's in the Albany House, which is over here, right by the park. Which park is that? Burkhart Park? I think it's Burkhart Park. And then they offer a Next Steps housing program for those that are 18 to 24. And they have they do outreach at their Cornerstone Outreach Center, which is right by West Albany at Queen and Elm. They are currently undergoing an expansion at the Albany House Shelter while the numbers are low and they're dealing with COVID and reduced ability to serve the youth because of the spacing requirements. They are expanding the shelter so that they can increase their numbers and who they serve in Albany. And that project's going to be done in December, if all goes well. They of course provide case management with a goal to reunite youth with their families or enable them to live sustainably on their own. And they also do workforce investments. So they're working with several partners on training programs and certifications for their staff and continuing to provide best practices for the safe and well-being of the youth that they serve. They did identify a few future needs. They are doing visioning work with their board, staff, and youth, and the needs in Albany include that they're discussing include the outreach and drop-in center, the LGBTQ specific housing needs, and emergency shelter for young adults 18 to 24. Local resources focused on youth homelessness issues will be needed, and we look forward to working with you to end youth homelessness in Albany. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. I appreciate the summary of those letters. At this time, I declare the public meeting closed. Let me get to the place. Give me a second at the time. At 7:02 p.m., September 22nd, 2021. Are there any committee needs to discuss the questions of the staff? I don't see anyone signed up to speak for that. Would the council like to make a motion? At this time, there's no resolution.
Mayor, there is no action needed. We just wanted to give you an annual report. Okay. This report will be submitted to
the record.
HUD, yeah, by the end of the month. So I would welcome any comments or suggestions through email. And I did forget to thank all of our partner agencies as well as our community development commissioners who work to try to assess needs and then evaluate applications. So we do a round of applications every year to see what those needs are, but we also reach out to agencies that don't apply and hope that they will. So
thank you very much for your report. Next on the agenda item is a public hearing on the open T-Hangar lease rate increase. The airport manager, Rob Romeo, is going to speak with us today, pages 84 and 85 of your packet. So the night's agenda is a public hearing for open T-Hangar lease rate increase directions. Lease rate increase directions for how to testify and submit written materials are published on the council agenda. I carry this public meeting hearing open at, my phone keeps acting crazy, at 7:04 p.m. Is there a staff report?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and give you guys an overview here. So can you guys hear me okay? Good evening, councilors, Mr. Mayor. I'm here to talk about the open T-Hangar lease rate increase at the Albany Municipal Airport. A recent Oregon Department of Aviation cost comparison study at the airport fees throughout Oregon revealed that the fees charged at the Albany Municipal Airport are considered to be too low. Comparing 5 airports the size of the Albany Municipal Airport, we found that the average lease rate to be $122. The Airport Advisory Commission recommends an increase of T-Hangar fees in keeping up with other similarly sized airports in Oregon. The current rate for the open T-Hangars is $80 per month. The Albany Airport Commission voted to raise the fee to $115 a month beginning January 1st of 2022. So that's where we're at.
So thank you very much. Is that all you have for us today?
Yep.
There was no written material submitted and no one signed up to speak. I declare the public hearing closed. 7:05 p.m. September 22nd, 2021. Would a councilor like to make a motion or council discussion? Go ahead. I see you, Councilor Olson.
I thought I'd wait before you.
I acknowledge you. Go ahead.
I'd like to ask, is that $122 average, is that for closed hangars or T-hangars?
Those are open T-Hangars.
They're all open T-hangars?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Any other councilors have any questions?
Do the other council people know what T-hangars are, particularly our new?
I was just about to ask him to explain that.
Yeah.
So Director Romeo, Airport Manager, could you please explain what a T-Hangar is?
Yep, it's a structure that houses airplanes, and they're open basically on the end. So the airplane can be pushed in and stored out of the weather, out of the sun, the elements, but it just doesn't have closed doors.
Yeah, so, essentially a roof.
Yes. Yep. So we don't have power on these. Other places have power, but the price goes up when you start adding power even higher. It's into $162 a month for power, and we don't have power, so we're thinking 115 is fair.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you haven't taken a tour of the airport, please contact Airport Manager Romeo and have him take you on a tour of it. I've been out there. Councilor Bartholomew's been out there. I know that Ray's been out there. Councilor Kopczynski's been out there. I'm not sure about Councilor Smith, but if you haven't had a chance to go out there, please do. So at this time, would the councilor like to make a motion?
I move that we accept the new rate for the T-hangars.
Second.
We got a second motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion passes. Thank you, Rob. I appreciate you coming out tonight.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks.
Okay, next on tonight's agenda is a public hearing for purchase of Hazelwood property. Directions for how to testify and submit written material for publish on the council agenda. I declare the public hearing open at, keeps doing it, 7:08 p.m. Is there a staff report?
There is. Can you hear me fine? Can you hear me well? All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So tonight we have our public hearing for the proposed sale of Hazelwood Park. A brief recap on how we've gotten here. Hazelwood Park was one of 2 properties identified for divestment in the 2021 Parks Master Plan. This is the second time it was identified for divestment, as Hazelwood was also identified in 2006. Earlier this year, you all voted to surplus the properties, and we posted a call for proposals on both our website and in the newspaper. Interested parties were to submit their proposals by June 22nd. In July, you approved the sale of the North Point property. We hope to bring Hazelwood back at that same time, but due to an easement request from Pacific Power, it was delayed until it was resolved. So we had several parties interested in the property. In the end, 2 proposals were received, one from the Creative Housing Coalition and one from a group of 3 neighbors who you will see in a little bit. Schuko, Pulver, and Zeller and Bray. The proposals were put online so that the public would have a chance to review prior to tonight's public hearing. Last week, the Creative Housing Coalition let us know that they are withdrawing their offer. We spoke with the city attorney and he recommended that we keep the materials in the packet and announce the withdrawal at tonight's meeting. So here we are. So tonight you'll hear a presentation from the three neighbors who have submitted a proposal. I'd like to introduce to you Nicole Schuko, Sammy Pulver, and Jill Zeller, and I'll turn it over to them for their presentation.
Well, I got one thing to do before you do that. Staff received written material from Michelle Shula and Lisa Price, and those items were forwarded to the council. And the people registered to speak, Director Ledane just mentioned, Jill Zellner, Sammy Pulver, and Nicole Schuko. So please, ladies, you have the floor.
Hi, I'm Sammy Pulver, and this is my father-in-law, Todd Pulver.
Hi.
I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. And Nicole should be starting us off.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So I am coming at you from Disneyland. I'm sitting in the corner here, the quietest corner I could find to bring this to you. So I am here to represent all of us that live near Hazelwood Park and just tell you a little bit about our with the park.
And who are you?
Nicole Schuko. I know it's dark. It was light when the meeting started. You see my Mickey ears? It's just dark. Okay, so first and foremost, for those of us presenting today, myself, Nicole Schuko, my kids are here too, and my husband, along with Sammy and Todd Pulver, and then Jill. We just really wanted to thank you for taking time listening to our proposal today. So here's a quick little picture of our houses. Mine's the blue one on the left-hand side. Sammy and her husband Anthony's is in the middle, and it's actually owned by Todd, which is Sammy's father-in-law. And then at the end there, we have Jill and Steven, and they live about 5 doors down, and they live right next to the Pacific Power substation. All right. So for this, we're gonna play a little video for you guys just because we're in Disneyland. I wanted to make sure you guys could hear us if we had any tech issues. I'm gonna go ahead and mute myself and you guys can watch the video.
You have audio?
Is everybody able to hear it? No?
Not yet.
No.
Huh. Anybody want to tell me how I can make audio happen?
Well, on the far right, there's an audio speaker that shows up at the bottom of the thing there.
Is
On the
there?
bar, see on the far right?
On the far right, the
click on
little
that.
bars, this?
No, click on the picture again.
Click on the picture.
again.
Right, now go to your right.
No, not that.
Now,
Yeah, you go on the right. You see it over there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you guys are blocking it. That's why.
Yeah.
I had all of your guys' videos. I'm sorry. Okay. It is up. Should be up all the way.
Nicole. So I actually think that you need to go back out to the screen sharing.
Okay.
Stop sharing and then go to the share screen, and there should be a little checkbox for adding audio.
Okay. So share screen.
And if you I have a copy of your presentation. I can just show it from here, and maybe
Oh.
it's easier.
Show the video. Yeah, that's fine.
Let's have Matt.
Okay. 1 second.
we want the park because we can have more space to play, and we can so the dogs can have more place to play. And
Can
we
someone
can
might
have
mute
our
your
Easter
phone? I
egg
can
hunt
hear kids in the
every year.
background.
I want the back park because I want more stuff to play with outside.
For me, I want the park to be a part of our property because I grew up on 2 and 3 acre properties, and you know the experiences that I had as a child with my family in that land, being able to learn about outdoors and really just enjoy nature. I really want my children to grow up with that same experience.
Our plan for the back park is to extend our backyard, and so I have more room to work on my 4-H animals.
Also, in our plan is we are going to build a 6-foot fence facing the Bonneville Electric Station and build a shared gate at the entrance of the park.
And for our how, we bought our house almost 8 years ago, and we paid cash for our house. And so our home value has almost tripled since we've moved in. So we have a lot of home equity. So we have been working with our credit union to take out a line of equity loan so that we can purchase the park and do some first updates such as fencing and things like that that will need to happen first. Yeah. Anything else you guys want to add?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want more stuff in the back park to
Too many ideas, huh?
have fun and stuff.
Yep.
And so me and my sister can practice our dance competition, like our dance for our dance competitions back here. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Okay, sorry. Those are my kids. They don't have volume control. Okay. So we are the Pulver family, and like Nicole said, my father-in-law is the one that owns it, and he wanted to start us off.
Hi guys, thank you. And well, this has been our home for almost 30 years. We've lived in this neighborhood, in the house across the street, and in this house, and we've had so many good memories of this park. We've had birthday parties, family birthday parties. We've had anniversary parties there. Just a great place for the neighbors to play. We used to, all the neighbor kids would get together and the parents, and we'd have flashlight tag and stuff out there behind all those trees that are there. And it was just great memories and great times. And the park's kind of slowly hasn't been taken care of as well as it should have. And we took it upon ourselves there a couple of years and went over there with weed eaters and stuff and made it our own.
We still do that.
Yeah. And, like I said, just so many great memories there. And I'd love to be able to see, we've got grandkids running around here, and I'd love them to be able to participate in that same area that my kids did when they were younger. So being able to do that and yeah.
So our plan is basically we also would fence our section and the extension of our house, and basically continue that legacy of continue. Oh, it went away. Continue the legacy of, raising our families with this property and enjoying it for family functions. And the how is my father-in-law. He would be obviously purchasing it because this is the home he owns, and then in a year, my husband and I plan to purchase the home and land because we've lived here for 12 and a half years, and this is our home. There was a little bit more to that PowerPoint. There was another video.
So where's the PowerPoint? Thank you.
And then go to the next slide. There we go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to Mayor Johnson and to the city council members for this opportunity to present our proposal to you all. My husband Stephen and I join our neighbors along the northern border of Hazelwood Park in the effort to purchase the park with the goal of preserving this vital open space. For myself, the park means the world to me. This 2.5-acre copse of Oregon oak, Douglas fir, and pine is a rare wildland asset for the city and its residents. Adjacent to a wetland frequented by blue herons and other bird life, as well as Oregon tree frogs in spring, this property is unique in its relatively untouched status. Having occupied their houses longer than we have, our neighbors feel a strong emotional attachment to the park. They're raising families who use the park on a regular basis, maintaining the park by mowing and weeding, enjoying the sight of the trees from their backyards, as do we. For us, an older couple, our reasons differ only in that we don't have kids to play out there, but we do share their passion for the open space. Our goal for purchasing what would be our portion of the property is preservation. For many decades, we have supported and used organic practices on our properties in Seattle and now here in Albany. What we hope to do with this parcel is to continue promoting the advantages of wildland preservation, whether it's public parks or private backyards here in Albany. From what I hear from our neighbors, they feel the same. Open lands are vital to families and communities, and we will all be contributing what makes and maintains Albany as a desirable location for all. And behind me, you can see our view of the oak trees, the fabulous trees, cherry tree, a plum. It's really a remarkable little space to be living next to.
Okay, so to wrap it up quickly, our plan is to divide the park into 3 sections. And we have a visual for you how we would do it. We do it at a slight slant so that each is equal. We know about the power plant easement, and that is not a problem. We also know about the sewer easement, which is for the sewer cap in our backyard. We are also aware of. And next slide, please. Our offer is $120,000 for the park, and we would be splitting that in three ways. And we would be securing our own financing, which we have already done. I think there may be one more slide. Thank you so much for your time, and we really hope that our vision is going to work for you guys.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you all very much for your presentation today.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
So, counselors, would you like to discuss any of this, or do you have any questions for the presenters? I see Counselor Johnson first, and Counselor Novak.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the neighbors' presentation, and I guess maybe I should. I need to disclose that Nicole and I aren't friends or anything, but her little boy and my granddaughter went to the same classes together, and so we know each other, but we're not friends and we don't, associate. But I just want to let everybody know that we do know each other, but that's as far as it goes. I really think that this is a good use of the property, but I really want to say to Carol Davies, the letter that she wrote, and for the coalition, you have been so gracious and so kind and wishing the neighbors well. And most of the time it's, dog eat dog world and stuff. And so it's really a pleasant experience to know that, there's no hard feelings. It didn't work out for us, but we hope it works for you. And so that is something that I just wanted to really bring out, that it was really a nice thing. So, and Nicole, I love your ears.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Anyone else have a statement? Counselor Novak was next.
Yes, so I guess it's my night to concur with Counselor Johnson all over the place. I too am impressed with civility in a time when people are so often unkind. So it's especially gracious and stands out when people exercise that kind of kindness toward one another. And I'm grateful to see that. And I also just want to say that I've appreciated in the past when I learned of the initiative that these families had taken to do their weeding and take care of that park on their own. And now to band together as they have, as friends and neighbors, to do this good thing that the city can't afford to do. And it just does my heart good to see that as well, because they're both as individual family groups and as friends and neighbors doing this thing for the good of all. And I just really respect that. And I wish them nothing but the best. Thank you.
Counselors, anyone else before I go? Well, I would like to say thank you. I would like to say thank you to all the families that presented today. And I will disclose that I did walk the park a few times just to get a feel for it. I've been here almost 27 years, and I've never actually been to the park, and almost crashed going to the entrance because I was driving too fast. I admit that. Chief, you didn't hear that. But I did have an opportunity to meet Nicole Shoko in person. I met her 3 lovely children, and I gave them all tokens to the carousel. And it was just a pleasure to meet with her and see her passion about retaining the park for the family use in the future. And so I also appreciate the hard work you guys put into it. And I'd love to see families get involved in local government, just to speak their truth to power. And I think that's wonderful. But on the flip side, I'd also like to thank the Creative Housing Coalition, Carol Davies, for being such a gracious loser, so to speak. I don't mean that in a negative way. She's very gracious, and I've known her as well. And I think that this whole thing worked out. And like Counselor Novak and Counselor Johnson said, it's really nice when people can combat each other and come away without bruises and blood. And so I really do appreciate the effort put in by both families and also by Creative Housing Coalition. Then with that, would a counselor like to make a motion?
I would move that we, I don't know how you want to put it, that we sell the surplus property at Hazelwood Park to the family group that gave the presentation tonight.
Seconded.
Well, we have a motion. Second.
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
Uh-oh.
Motion passes.
Is this a public hearing?
Thank you very much for coming. You go back to Disneyland. You guys have a good evening, and thank you very much all for coming.
Good.
Thank you all so much.
Good night now.
Hi.
Thank you very much.
Good night. So I will say that the next item was pulled from the agenda, and I would appreciate, City Manager, can you tell us why it was pulled from the agenda?
And what item are you looking at there, Mayor?
Item E, historic review.
Oh, okay, yes. That was an issue of noticing, and it will come back to you at your October 13th meeting.
Okay.
So thank you very much for that clarification. Councilors all get that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next item is business from the public. Directions for how to testify and submit written materials were published on the council agenda. No written materials were submitted. However, Mr. Cody, so please pronounce your name, sir.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's Utzman.
Utzman, Cody Utzman signed up to speak. So Mr. Utzman, you have the floor. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I've prepped a briefing here. It's going to take me 4 minutes to read. May I please have that time?
I think you're the only person signed up to speak. I will go ahead and allow that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. All right, thank you, City Council. My name is Cody Etzman. I own and operate Bodie Artisan Bakery at 315 Lion Street in downtown Albany. We provide products to dozens of local businesses, farmers markets, and thousands of Albany residents have come to rely on the products and services we offer. I have operated this location since May of 2018. I employ 12 people, and over the last 10 years have operated a variety of businesses in Albany, employing hundreds of local residents. I humbly come before the City Council today to bring your attention to a serious matter that we are having with the Code Compliance Department at the City of Albany's Building Department. When we started our lease in May of 2018, the building was owned by a former member of the City Council. It was rented to us and described as a commercial production kitchen, which it has been for the better part of 20 years, formerly housing Izzy's Pizza and later Bomax Barbecue. I had no reason to doubt this given the position the landlord held in the community. The space had existing fixtures and infrastructure that has been there since Izzy's Pizza installed them in the early part of 2000. We accepted the lease and started our business. We are licensed by the ODA, Albany Health Department, and we have yearly fire inspections from the Albany Fire Department. We have done no major work on the space that we have not permitted. Any work we have done has been reviewed and signed off on, specifically relating to electrical permits. In May of 2021, the building owner was served with a correction notice stating that there has been a change of use and there is no existing C of O for the building and our specific operation. We were not provided that notice until late June of 2021 after the building owner sold the building to a new party. At that time, we did not know what was going on and what was needed. We were literally blindsided. We have been operating for over 3 years in a safe, licensed, and approved manner according to the 3 departments previously mentioned. Once we became aware of this correction notice, we consulted with Mary Guetta, a senior code compliance officer at the building department. Mary did a site visit and gave us guidance on how to proceed. She confirmed with us that this was an administrative error and a simple one-page application that would solve the issue the code compliance office is having. Over the next few months, we worked in good faith with Mary Guetta and Civil West Engineering to prepare the application. 3 weeks after submitting the application in late August, we were contacted by Jonathan Balcom in the Code Compliance Office. He informed us that Mary no longer worked in that department and we would have to submit a full site plan review. This site plan review must include the entire building. This request was shocking as it is as if the building does not exist in the building department records. Jonathan is asking us to retrofit and permit the entire space, including landscaping plans, environmental impact study, concrete strength tests, HVAC calculations, full electrical and plumbing on things that we did not install and have been on the site for nearly 20 years. This administrative error will force our business to close and take our jobs elsewhere. After hearing Jonathan Belcom's position, we contacted Peter, the city manager, and he arranged a meeting for us with Jonathan and Matthew Rutgers in the Code Compliance Department so we could discuss in person why they would be asking us to do such work. At that meeting, Jonathan confirmed his position and did not provide sufficient documentation to us. Following that meeting, we asked Jonathan for an appeals board review. Jonathan said that he was the secretary of the appeals board and my time frame for asking for an appeal had passed and would not grant us our rights to an appeal board review. We have done nothing wrong. Sorry. We are not operating at any unsafe. Sorry, it's my business. We are not operating in any unsafe manner. We have followed the rules and we feel we are being treated very unfairly. We survived COVID business restrictions, now to only be forced to close our business due to an administrative error in the building department. We humbly ask the city council to help save our business and local jobs, and if the body has the power to simply grant an appeal board's hearing, we will respect and follow the recommendations of the appeals board review. I thank you for your time, and I'm open to any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Utzman. I see, I can feel your pain looking at through this monitor. Would staff like to come on, comment and participate in this discussion?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, I know that Matthew Rutgers is available too, and I'll turn the floor over to him, and then I'd be happy to comment too if needed.
Right, thank you.
Sure. So I certainly understand where Mr. Utsman's coming from, and I felt we had a good meeting with him. What I could offer, it sounds like he would really like to go before the appeals board, which Jonathan's quoting language out of our municipal code. So we're, as staff, we're bound to follow that code. Now, council has some ability to basically say, no, we'd like to extend that. I would defer to Mr. Kidd or City Attorney Kidd to verify that. I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm definitely not an attorney. But I'm more than happy to work with Mr. Utsman to try to come up with a solution here.
So my question is that, so what I understand from what Mr. Utsman's saying is that stuff was done before they took occupancy, and now they're being asked to go back and retrofit those things because they have their business there now.
So not to get into this building has a fairly long history, and don't have to get into a great amount of detail there, but most of you do recall Bomax was in this location and had done a good amount of work without permits. At the time, building official Gary Stutzman working with them in trying to get a bunch of the work that was done permitted. They at some point during that process, they had felt or decided that it was best for them to move to a different location, mostly because in order to get permits, I think it was going to be cost prohibitive, or maybe they wanted to move to a different location. I can't speak to exactly the reasons, but at that time, the building was basically approved as a shell. So basically the structure is there and approved, but any new use coming into it would require permits to establish basically the new business. Just like if you were to convert, a good example would be, so like the Natty Dresser, when they moved into the former Riley's building, they had to get building permits to convert that to a mercantile use. So that's essentially the kind of the position that we're in right now. Certainly will and been to work with Mr. Utsman on kind of what the next steps are, and understand that he'd like to appeal the requirements for some of the building permits that he's being asked for. I don't have any objection to that. Again, I defer to City Attorney Sean Kidd to see if that's something that through the municipal code that the council is able to do.
City Attorney?
So this is somewhat new to me, Mayor and Council. I haven't been involved in this case, but just listening to this tonight, I'll have to get some detail, some background on exactly what needs to be done. I mean, if the business is operating out of compliance with the code, then they need to come into compliance with the code in order to operate the business. The council would be ill-advised to make an exception in the code for one business and then try to enforce that code on every other business in the city. But again, I don't know the facts of this particular case, what exactly it is that Jonathan is asking him to do. I can talk to Matthew and Jonathan about it, and then we can kind of form a plan at that point. If that means getting together and having a meeting with them to see if there's a path forward, then yeah, absolutely. But again, we just have to I'd have to get more of the actual details of what it is that they're trying to accomplish. So.
Thanks. So Mr. Utsman, how long have you guys been in business at that location?
Since May of 2018.
And it was in operation before that with another business in that building?
And so the history on the building, as Matthew has described, was that it was a commercial production kitchen that the ODA had licensed and had been a commercial kitchen for the better part of 20 years. And the rub here is where when Bomax Barbecue moved into that space, they attempted to change it from a commercial production kitchen to a full service restaurant. They ended up abandoning that project. But when they started and opened that permit, it basically canceled out the previous C of O, right? That it was a commercial production kitchen. We were rented the space by a former city council member as this is a production kitchen. Been operating there, doing everything we can. To the degree of where, like, there's gotta be some common ground here of where we can kind of meet in the middle. And that's where I feel in front of the appeals board, if there's permitting that we need to do, we will do it. But what Jonathan is asking us for is Jonathan wants us to give him core samples of the concrete in order to make sure that the concrete, that the walk-in that was installed 20 years ago, that the building department has failed to keep records on, can support that the concrete can support the walk-in. And we asked Jonathan, well, how do we go about this? Well, you can hire a sonar engineer, or you can give me core samples of the concrete and have them submitted to a person. You know, like the 2 giant HVAC units on the building department has failed to keep records on them. So he wants me to re-permit the 2 commercial HVAC units that have been on the building for 15 years. And you cannot tell me, Mr. Mayor, or whoever is listening here, that those 2 giant HVAC units were installed on that building without a permit. The city failed to hold the records correctly, and now they're asking me to go back and permit something that has already previously been done. You know, it's egregious. And, you know, he's asked me to open up the walls in the entire space and draw the plumbing and draw the electrical on the entire space for things I've never installed.
Give him favor, Father.
You know, so this is where this must go before the appeals board, where they can hear all of the facts of this and make a ruling. They are the board of record that can actually, and I have said here, I am willing to accept their review, their recommendations, and whatever it is that they are asking us to do. I will do it in order to preserve the jobs in this community, the livelihood of all of my employees, and the services that I provide to this community.
Makes sense to me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Utzman. So what is our next steps, city manager?
Mr. Mayor, if you would, it sounds like Mr. Utzman would be happy with going before the appeals board. And I'm not sure that that's not available to him. In fact, I have an inkling that it is, but I need to square with some of the things that have been said in various quarters. So if you'd give us a couple of days to get together with our community development director, Matthew, and with the city attorney, and then we'll get back to you before the end of the week.
Mr. Utzman, are you comfortable with that? Just a minute, Councilor Olson. Mr. Olson, are you comfortable?
Yes. Mr. Mayor, I just want the opportunity to go before the appeals board and have this heard, and I am willing to accept whatever they suggest we do, and we will proceed forward from there.
So thank you very much for that. And I saw Councilor Olson first, then Councilor Johnson.
Oh, yes. And I'd like to ask the city manager to, if some rules have to be changed in order that he can appeal this, I would like to have you bring back what needs to be changed so he can appeal it.
Yes, well, I hear you, but I would defer to our community development director on this also, because I'm not sure to what extent those are building code rules, which of course are not within our control. But let me take a further look at it. And, you know, anytime you want to change your code, of course, that will take a little bit of time. So we'll get back to you before the end of the week.
You're asking us to change 50 pages worth of code, and you can't and you want to quibble about this?
So let's trust the city manager to bring back the next steps. I'm gonna acknowledge Councilor Johnson first, and I'll go to Director Rutgers.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Olson, first of all, I missed the name of the business at the beginning.
Yes, it's Bodie Artisan Bakery.
Oh,
Bodie
okay.
Bakery, yes.
All right, great.
Yeah.
And I really am sorry for what you're going through. One of my first issues, it sounds like all started with some sort of an administrative error for the city. If that happens, we need to take responsibility. You know, we can't just say, oh, we made a mistake and so no big deal. We're here, it's your livelihood that's at stake. And so I have no problem. I mean, I'd like to hear the whole story, and I appreciate you bringing forth. It's hard to come to the council and say, you know, I mean, say, well, your staff is doing this, but we need to hear this. I think it sounds like Matthew's doing great where he's, you know, wants to work with you, no problem. And so I would have no problem hearing it on appeal. In fact, I would welcome it. So I hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So thanks. Councilor Novak was next.
Thank you. I just want to say, especially as someone who is familiar with food service industry of any kind, this seems really unfair on a lot of levels. And I appreciate Mr. Utzman bringing it to our attention. And I would hope with all my heart that this gentleman gets a hearing, because I think he certainly deserves it, as do his staff and his customers. It's only right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councilor would like to make a comment? If no one else would like to comment, I'd like to make this, and I put this idea out there. Oh, Councilor Bartholomew, go ahead.
Mr. Utzman, are you able to continue in your business during this time?
Yes, we have not been issued any stop notice. Jonathan, the city has forwarded whatever relevant permits that they do have on the space to us, but are still requiring us to move forward with the full site plan review. Short of a stop work order, which has not forthcome, we are operating in the same safe manner that we always have been.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Director Rutgers.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And just wanted to kind of extend, you know, I as kind of circle back with city manager and with city attorney, you know, my hope out of all of this would, you know, my goal would be to not have to go to the appeals board, and certainly welcome sitting down with Mr. Utzman again and coming up with a solution. You know, I certainly understand where he's coming from, and you know, our goal is to get it permitted, what needs to be permitted, and hopefully we can find some flexibilities there and not have to go to an appeals board. I don't know that that we need to get to that level. And, you know, certainly there's building codes that we don't have a lot of control over, but then there are some aspects that we do. So I'm reasonably confident that we can come to some sort of solution. So I'll circle back with city manager and city attorney, and then probably reach out to Mr. Utzman and see if we can get another meeting set and figure out what a path forward could look like.
And thank you very much, Director Rutgers. I would like to ask this question. What would be the cost of doing this we're paying for somebody else's mistakes or our mistakes? What would be the cost of that for Mr. Utzman? Can you give us that number when you come back?
As far as the cost of permitting, I can certainly come up with that. You know, I can come back with a report on that.
Okay, and Mr. Utzman, can you come back with a estimate of what it would cost you to do that?
Yeah, so I've already had over $3,000 in just basic expenses from communicating with Civil West in the city. Civil West Engineering, which is located in downtown Albany, is estimated that the permitting process, in order for them to produce the documents that Jonathan is asking for, would be in the $50,000 range, because he's asking for us to do an environmental impact study. He's asking for us to drill concrete samples, send them in and have them engineered. I mean, things that we didn't even do. On top of that, the building owner probably will not even allow us to open up the walls and investigate all of these things. So the Civil West could charge me up to 50 grand. And that's not even the rub. The rub is then these things were installed 20 years ago and there should have never been a change of use. So then the city is ultimately going to say, okay, these things are not current. Maybe your concrete isn't as thick as it's supposed to be now.
Okay.
But the assumption is that when they were installed correctly, and that's the position that the building department must take. They must show the burden of proof.
Okay.
You know,
Mr. Utzman,
hundreds of thousands of dollars, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. So I appreciate the city manager for bringing back a discussion for us to have. I trust him and Mr. Director Ruckers and Mr. Utzman to be forthcoming with us. And we'd like to hear that information when we come back. And we'll be able to figure out the next steps for Mr. Utzman and the city. That's our job. That's what we're elected to do.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much for your time this evening, sir. And we definitely want to hear more about this. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Yeah.
Good
Thank
luck.
you. Thank you, council. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right. So next agenda item, Mr. Utz, thank you very much for coming. Utzman. Approval of agreements, IGA of Linn County for dispatch services. Chief Wooten on pages 212 and 218 through 218. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, we do. But before I give the staff report, I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for reading the proclamation for Fire Prevention Awareness Week, first week of October, and the importance of a working smoke detector. Just this morning at 3:30, a fire started in somebody's garage here in town. And being that it was 3:30 in the morning, the fire was able to grow, and to the point that there's significant damage to the garage. But the success story here, the good piece, if there is a good piece, which this is it, that smoke, as it worked its way into the house from the garage, set off working smoke detectors in this individual's house. There were 5 people living there. All 5 were able to get out along with grabbing their pets. Station 14 here in North Albany was thankfully staffed at that time. Nobody was out on a call from that station. And they were able to have a quick response time and keep the fire contained to the garage. So to anybody who's listening on social media or tuned in, please check your smoke detectors and make sure they are working. So thank you for that proclamation.
Thank you.
Regarding the IGA that's before you, this is an IGA with Linn County Sheriff's Office for dispatch services. I'm just going to refer to them as LCSO. LCSO has dispatched the Albany Fire Department along with other Linn County fire departments since 1986, when Linn County first adopted the 911 system. We are trying to clean up some administrative items and need to memorialize our agreement with LCSO, hence the IGA in front of you. If you're wondering how our fee is calculated, LCSO takes the cost of dispatch services and proportionally allocates those costs to LCSO and the other fire departments in Linn County. So last fiscal year, of all the 911 calls to LCSO, 18% were fire calls, of which 47% of those belong to us, belong to Albany Fire Department. For this cost, Linn County answers the 911 call, provides complete dispatch services. In addition, they manage and maintain all radio equipment needed to dispatch us. Another benefit of using LCSO is it allows for interoperability between all Linn County fire departments, since we all use the same dispatch center and thus the same radio frequencies. We've been extremely happy with Linn County's service to our community and our department for the past 35 years and consider them an excellent partner. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you very much, Chief. Council, do you have any questions for the Chief? It looks like there's no questions for you. I'm going to want to say that this is a very essential service for every member of this community. And I'm going to ask the question, would the council like to make a motion?
I'll move to accept the IGA with Linn County for dispatch services.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
Do we have a resolution on this?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I didn't see
Hear
a
the
resolution.
Page 213.
The resolution, yes, there is. It is on page
213.
213.
I move we adopt the resolution on page 13.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion passes. Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is IGA with Linn County Mental Health. Chief Marshall Harnden is going to speak with us. Your documents are on page 219 and 223 of the packet.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Very similar to Chief Wooten. This is a cleanup of some agreements that were already in place. The good news is that we don't pay anything. It's just a general partnership with Linn County Mental Health, where the citizens of Albany and the police department have benefited a great deal since January of 2017. As you're reading, as we tackle mental health crises across the state, mobile crisis teams are kind of the new and up and coming thing. We've already had it in place since 2017. The agreement in front of you just formalizes that agreement. It allows us to equip and give space to a Linn County mental health professional, and she responds to calls actually all over the county, but we are the biggest user of that service. And so she's dispatched and is housed here inside the police department and can respond here upon dispatch. The primary thing is that she can triage calls, so we don't have to go to those calls, or she can come out and take over the calls when it is more of a mental health call than a police call. So it's a great resource, and I'm happy to put the IJ in front of you as well as the county commissioners.
So Chief, I have a question before I go to Councilor Johnson. She doesn't go out by herself, does she? She goes with a police officer, correct?
It depends on the call. Anytime that there's a risk or escalating behavior, we'll go and stabilize the situation, or she'll be with us. When I got here, she did not have a bulletproof vest or a ballistic vest, and we purchased one for her. She has a radio and the like. Kirsten, some of you have met her, she's very good about reading the situation and can pause and wait for police to stabilize it before she gets there, but it really depends on the call.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Johnson.
Yes, Chief Harnden, we need this so much, like you say, with the mental health crisis all over the country. I was wondering, reading this, do you still work with chance a little bit, where someone's able to come if there's like an arrest or a stop of someone who's a little unruly, that instead of just letting them go, that maybe someone's there, or does this kind of take that place?
It's a step, I think, a bridge in a lot of ways. We do work with our local outreach partners in many forums, including the Jackson Street staff. So our partnership with Linn County Mental Health, a lot of times we'll free up the officers and get that individual to those services rather than have tie-up police services to do that and further traumatize the individual when it's not necessarily a police matter in the first place.
Yeah, because was it about a week ago or so where there was an incident where, all the beds were full and stuff, and a mental person was taken to the ER and there was no room, no one to, take care of him and stuff. That's pretty sad. And so what she had to do, the observation or analysis, like in the waiting room or something, so if she's willing to do it and free up our officers, I think it's just a great thing. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other councilors have any comments or questions for the chief? Councilor Olson, please.
Yes. Does this person have their own vehicle?
Yes, we're working on it, but she does have access to a county-owned vehicle.
So it won't be one of those armored car kind of things that our cops are driving these days?
No, she has a standard government issue sedan of some kind. And she does have a jacket that just shows that she's a crisis responder and not.
Good.
is
I
not
appreciate
affiliated with
that.
the police department.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great.
So we'd like to, would council like to make a motion?
Yes, I would move to adopt the resolution authorizing execution of an intergovernmental agreement within Linn County Mental Health, excuse me, with Linn County Mental Health for mobile crisis assistance.
Second.
The motion is,
And I think there's a resolution there too.
Yeah, I did. That's what I'd read.
that's what she read. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much, Chief, for your presentation this evening. Next one is a IGA loan of loan administration, ED loan administration for OCOGs, Oregon Cascade West Council of Governments. Now that's Director, Manager Sherry, when your pages are 224 to 234. So Seth, you're there? Are you, City Manager, are you gonna present this or is Seth gonna present this?
It should be Mr. Sherry, but hang on 1 minute.
I don't see him.
I can mention that we did discuss this at the work session on Monday.
That's right.
Exactly.
Peter, I can step
Seth
in.
gave his
if I-
presentation.
Okay, if Mr. Mayor, Director Rutgers will step in.
Okay, so we all at the work session.
Yeah, sure. And that's, I don't have the packet in front of me, but this is the topic that Mr. Sherry had brought up at the work session on Monday, and this is for the OCA or for Oregon Cascades West Council of Governments.
Cascade.
Yeah. To basically do loan management for economic development and the loans that we give out. And it sounded like on Monday's work session, the council was supportive of that. So really, if there's any questions, more than happy to answer those.
I didn't have any questions. Council, do you have any questions for Director Rutgers? So there's a resolution on page 232. Would the council like to make a motion?
I would move to adopt the resolution approving the intergovernmental agreement with Oregon Cascades West Council of Governments for Economic Development Loan Administration.
Second.
We have
Second.
motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion passed. Thank you very much, Director Rutgers, for stepping in and taking charge of that. I appreciate it. The next agenda item, item Delta, is IGA with NACSD to incorporate Dumbeck Water District. Director Bailey has the floor, page 235 to 244, and the resolution is on page 244. So Director Bailey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is maybe the last thing we have to do in the work effort to absorb the Dumbeck Water District customers so that they become direct customers of the City of Albany. The IGA that you have tonight is a revision of an IGA between the city and the North Albany County Service District commissioners, which was signed in 1990. We needed to just barely update the IGA in order to get Dumbeck in, but we decided to go ahead and bring it into the 21st century. So the revisions are pretty significant in the bold and strike copy that you have, but most of those deletions are removing language that doesn't apply. So this IGA was written with prospective actions that the city and the county service district needed to take. Those have all been done. So the IGA will be shortened. It will not change the way we provide water to or deal with either the customers in the county service district or the board, which is the Benton County Board of Commissioners, serves as the board of directors for this district. It just updates the map, and it includes information that Dumbeck is now part of the county service district. And We did update some of the terms. The most notable change was we added an actual term and a termination clause at the end that allows us to reopen the agreement, which wasn't in there originally. The IGA was taken to the Benton County Board of Commissioners meeting yesterday, and acting as the County Service District Board, they approved the IGA at their meeting yesterday. So with that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Director Bailey. Council, do you have any questions?
No.
So I must disclose that I've known the chair of the Dumbeck Water District for probably 18 years. We used to work together with a company in Corrales. And so I know him. I wanted everyone to know that I've known Mr. Price forever. So, and I was also his mother's insurance agent. Just on the record, just let me know. Council, there's a motion in front of you. We've got our staff report. Thank you, Director Bailey. Would the council like to make a motion?
I would move to adopt the resolution on page 236, authorizing execution of a revised intergovernmental agreement with the North Albany County Service District to incorporate the Dumbeck Lane Domestic Water Supply District.
Second.
I would love to second that.
At 3 seconds. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion passes. Thank you very much, Director Bailey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the consent calendar, adoption of the consent calendar. One is approval, item A is approval of minutes. And then item B is adoption of resolutions. So who would like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I move we approve the minutes as written.
Seconded.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Item B, adoption of a resolution. Would the council like to make a motion? Oh, actually, I'll read them for you. Accepting public sidewalk easement for Periwinkle Path, pages 255, 258. Number 2 is adoption of ROW dedication for, that's right of way, right? Grand Prairie Townhomes, 259 to 264. House Bill 2023-43, local enterprise zone exemption, we wish to discuss on Monday night.
I would move to adopt the rest of the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Is there a second?
Mm-hmm.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion passes. Oh, next agenda. Thank you, council. Next on the agenda is business from the council. Right now, Councilor Olson, you're first on my screen.
I have nothing more.
You have nothing more. Thank you, sir. Councilor Kopczynski, you're next up.
Nothing.
Councilor Johnson.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Councilor Novak.
Nothing this evening, sir.
Councilor Smith.
I was wanting to find out when we are going to get another report on the potential changes to the citizens advisory groups. That has disappeared from the whiteboard, the electronic whiteboard, and I didn't want that to fall off of our discussion plans.
So I think we decided to let it stand for now without any changes.
Mr. Mayor.
When did we make that decision?
Go ahead, City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I was going to address that when you turn to me for some
Okay,
time.
I'll let him address it, Councilor Smith.
Okay.
Thank you.
All I have tonight is these several emails about different things in the city. Cats have come back up, and so I've received several emails about cats. And so I've been discussing that with people that were interested the first time. And other than that, the parade planning is going. Our next public meeting was going to be on the 27th at the YMCA at 7 p.m. And that's it for me for this week.
Mr.
Mayor
Mayor,
Johnson.
I think you forgot Councilors Novak and Bartholomew.
I asked both of them.
I missed Stacy.
I missed. Sorry, Councilor Bartholomew. You can hit me with a hammer later on sometime.
Okay, I would just like to thank Mayor Troudson and Library Director. Please state.
Icanoy.
Eric.
Icanoy. I call him Eric. Icanoy, for responding to the letter addressed to the council by Mr. Jeffrey Evans, and working with him to resolve concerns. I really appreciate that. And I just wanted to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Johnson. Your hand was still up, Councilor Johnson.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
My mistake. Never mind. I was gonna say I was gonna move for a revolution, but you know how that goes.
Okay, thank you. We're getting a little punchy. Thank you very much. And so city manager report is next.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two things. One is that I participated in a meeting last Thursday along with Chuck Perino, our emergency manager, and our safety officer, where we get together with Helping Hands and a few other folks on a virtual meeting to try to address solutions to a growing number of COVID cases, Delta variant COVID cases in the shelter. Second Chance was also on this phone call, although they haven't experienced the same level of breakout. But there were quite a few of us, and we are looking for ways in which we can help them. I may be coming to the council for approval for a use of some land and maybe for a limited amount of funds to help them as well. The second thing is that you had mentioned, Councilor Smith had mentioned citizen advisor groups. That was on our projected agenda. And I'm here to ask you if we can table that for now for a couple of reasons. One is that there is potential for climate change legislation, which would have us create another citizen advisory group. But the biggest reason is that the staff have got quite a bit on their plate right now, and that if we could put that in the holding tank, that would be much appreciated.
Councilor Smith, are you comfortable with that? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons that I was concerned about that was the climate change legislation that's being kicked around that could give us 4 separate transportation related advisory committees. And anyway, I'm not opposed to including climate change. That just bolsters my position, wanting to consolidate that effort into a comprehensive transportation system group. But we can talk about that later. Anyway, I'm glad to know that it hasn't fallen off the edge of the agenda. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And so, City Manager, are you have completed your report?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor.
So next meeting dates, Monday, October 11th at 2021 at 4 p.m.
Councilor Novak is waving her finger.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I can't raise my hand on this particular one, so forgive me for having something now that Councilor Smith had brought up the issue with the citizen advisory groups. I just need to reach out to someone on that count. With regard to, I would reach out to Mary. I had requested that a gentleman who is serving on one of the groups, and he is living in my ward, and I had requested a couple meetings ago in this regard at his behest that he be representing Ward 1 as opposed to Ward 3. He was nominated to this position or put on this position by someone in Ward 3. And then we'd gone through the channels to request that since he lives in Ward 1, that he become a representative of Ward 1. His first name is Eric, and I cannot at this moment think of his last name.
So which one are you talking about?
The committee. That's the problem.
It's the Public Safety Commission.
Yes, Public Safety.
It's the Public Safety Commission.
Yes,
and that has been taken care of.
It has been taken care of. Okay, good. Thank you.
It has been
yes. Good. In this moment, I just had no idea. And I thought, well, that's something I'd really like to follow up on. So thank you very much. Thank you.
That was the position that was for Ward 3B. And I have a new appointee to fill that vacancy at the next council meeting.
Okay. Councilor Johnson, your hand is still up. Well, thank you.
I'm not really trying to gain attention here. I am sorry.
So we're going to next meetings. Everybody good? Okay, so next meeting date's Monday, October 11th, 2021 at 4 p.m. for a work session. Monday, there's also a joint planning session at that same, right after that meeting's over at 5:15. And Wednesday, October 13th, 2021 at 6 p.m. And with that next meeting on the 11th, my wife and I have already celebrated our 36th anniversary. So I'm not looking forward to this thing. And I'll call for the adjournment of the meeting. Thank you all for participating this evening.
All right, great. Good meeting. Good night, everybody.
Let's go back to work. Thank you.